The Zarkalians had ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy for nearly 1,000 years. Their empire stretched across thousands of star systems. Their fleets patrolled every known hyperspace lane, and their warriors had crushed any species that dared to resist their rule. They had fought wars against insectoid hive minds, battled silicon-based war machines, and even wiped out an entire race of sentient gas clouds. And yet, through all their conquests, they had never once known fear. That changed when the human warship arrived. It was not a fleet, not an armada, not even a battle group. It was one ship, one lone vessel that emerged from the darkness of space, its hull black as the void itself. It bore no markings of an empire, no insignia of a ruling council. It carried only a single name in a language most of the galaxy could not read: vengeance. The Zarkalians laughed when they first saw it. They had seen countless primitive species try to resist them before, and they had crushed them all with ease. But something about this ship was different. It did not run. It did not broadcast surrender, and it did not beg for mercy. It simply waited. The Zarkalian admiral, Kylos Var, watched from the bridge of his command, Dreadnought, the Imperium's wrath. He was a veteran of 100 campaigns, a warrior who had seen entire planets burn. He found it almost amusing that this lone ship thought it could stand against the might of the Zarkalian Empire. "Send a warning shot," he ordered lazily. A pulse of plasma fire streaked across the void, a brilliant arc of destruction meant to scare the foolish humans into submission. It missed the Vengeance by mere kilometers, but the ship did not so much as flinch. Then, without warning, it moved. The ship accelerated faster than any vessel the Zarkalians had ever seen. It did not follow known flight patterns, did not adhere to the predictable physics of space combat. It zigzagged through the void, twisting and turning with impossible agility. The Dreadnought's tracking systems struggled to lock on, its gunners cursing in frustration. "Impossible," Var muttered under his breath, and then the Vengeance opened fire. There was no energy buildup, no slow charging of weapons, no visible torpedoes or plasma bolts. One moment the Zarkalian fleet was whole, and the next, half of it was gone. Ships shattered like glass, their hulls torn apart by unseen forces. Explosions rippled through the void, and the admiral could hear the panicked screams of his officers as the destruction unfolded. This isn't possible," one of his sub-commanders shouted. It wasn't just the raw firepower that terrified them. It was the precision. The human warship did not fire blindly, did not unleash chaotic devastation. Every shot was surgical, every blast targeted. It was as if the ship knew exactly where to hit, exactly how to cripple their most powerful vessels. The Zarkalians had fought hundreds of wars. They had faced foes with superior numbers, advanced technology, and deadly weapons. But never before had they faced an enemy who did not fight with rage or desperation. The humans fought like predators. Cold, calculated, efficient. Var clenched his mandibles. "Open a channel! Demand their surrender!" But before his transmission could even go through, the Vengeance spoke first. A single message, broadcast across all frequencies. "We are here for justice. Surrender now or be erased." And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Zarkalian Empire felt fear. Admiral Kylos Var's mandibles clicked anxiously. Fear was an emotion unfamiliar to him, unwelcome in his mind, yet it slithered through his chest like a parasite. The human warship hung in the void, motionless once more, as if waiting, no, daring them to make a move. How is this possible?" one of his bridge officers stammered, his scaled hands trembling over his console. "One ship? Against an entire fleet?" Var snarled. "It's a trick. Some kind of advanced weapon stolen from another race. The humans don't have this kind of power." He wasn't sure if he was trying to convince his crew or himself. The bridge was filled with chaos, officers shouting over one another, status reports flooding in. Half their fleet was destroyed in under a minute. Half. Entire battles had been fought and won with fewer casualties, and yet the human warship had not taken a single hit. Var slammed his fist against his command console. All remaining ships form a defensive line. Focus all weapons on that vessel. I don't care what it takes. Destroy it. The Zarkelian ships obeyed. Plasma cannons, disruptor torpedoes, ion lances, all of them turned their wrath toward the Vengeance. The void lit up with the firepower of an empire, energy scorching across the blackness of space, converging upon the lone human warship. For a moment, Var allowed himself to believe it was over. Then the Vengeance moved again. Not away, not to evade, forward. Straight through the storm of fire as if it were nothing. Weapons meant to tear through the hulls of dreadnoughts simply vanished upon impact. Shields that should have been overwhelmed held firm, shimmering with an eerie, almost unnatural glow. The ship cut through their fleet like a shadow in the dark, untouched, unscathed, unstoppable. The bridge of the Imperium's wrath erupted in horror. Officers shouted in disbelief. Some abandoned their stations, as if fleeing would save them. "Impossible!" Var roared, gripping the edges of his command chair. His mind raced. This had to be a trick, a deception, some kind of illusion. Then the human ship fired again. This time it did not simply destroy, it disassembled. A Zarkelian battlecruiser, the Vorlak's Pride, crumbled in an instant. Not an explosion, not a detonation. The ship unraveled, its armor peeling away, its weapons melting into dust, its crew vanishing as if they had never existed. Var's heart pounded in his chest. No known weapon in the galaxy could do this. Not even the most advanced doomsday devices had the power to erase a ship so cleanly, so effortlessly. "This is your last warning," the human voice echoed through the comms, cold and absolute. "Surrender." Var clenched his fists. The Zarkelian Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. They had razed civilizations, enslaved species, crushed rebellions without mercy. They had never surrendered. And yet, his eyes darted to the destruction outside. The human ship did not negotiate. It did not ask for peace. It did not waver. For the first time in his life, Admiral Kalos Var felt truly, completely powerless. And for the first time in the history of the Zarkelian Empire, a commander spoke the words his kind had never spoken before. "We surrender." A suffocating silence fell over the bridge of the Imperium's wrath. The words had left Admiral Kalos Var's mouth, but they felt foreign, unnatural. The Zarkelian Empire had never surrendered. Never. And yet, as the human warship Vengeance loomed before them, as his once mighty fleet lay in ruins, there was no other choice. His officers stared at him in shock, some with wide, disbelieving eyes, others with barely contained rage. A few even reached for their weapons, as if the very idea of surrender was more intolerable than death. Var ignored them. His pride, his honor, none of it mattered anymore. Survival did. A moment passed, then another. The Vengeance did not reply. The silence stretched so long that Var began to wonder if the humans had even heard his words. He opened his mandibles to speak again, to repeat the surrender, when the human ship finally responded. Acknowledged. One word, simple, unfeeling. A brief pulse of energy rippled from the Vengeance, washing over the remaining Zarkelian ships. Systems flickered, weapons shut down, shields powered off. A soft hum resonated through the bridge of the Imperium's wrath, like a great beast exhaling after a long hunt. The humans had disabled them. Var felt a strange mixture of relief and humiliation settle in his chest. They could have finished the job. They could have erased every last one of them from existence, just as they had done to the Vorlak's pride. Instead, they had accepted his surrender. He should have been grateful. So why did it feel like something far worse was coming? A new voice crackled over the comms. This time, it was not the cold, mechanical broadcast from before. It was something else. Something alive. "Admiral Kalos Var," the voice said, smooth and precise. A human voice, male, unhurried, yet carrying the weight of something ancient and deliberate. "You have fought well. But your empire is finished." Var swallowed thickly. "The Zarkelian Empire is vast. This is but one fleet." "No," the voice countered. "It was your best fleet, your strongest commanders, your most advanced warships." The human let the words settle before delivering the killing blow. "And we just destroyed them with one ship." Var felt his stomach churn. He knew it was true, but hearing the enemy say it, calmly, factually, made it undeniable. "You think your empire will recover?" the voice continued. "It will not. As we speak, your homeworld is being surrounded. Your supply lines are being severed. Your colonies are being burned." A chill ran through Var's bones. Impossible. No species could move that fast. "You misunderstand." A pause. "We have already been here." Var's breath hitched. His claws gripped the armrest of his chair. "You are only learning now what has already been decided." For the first time in his life, Admiral Kalos Var understood what it meant to lose. And the worst part? The humans weren't celebrating. They weren't gloating. They weren't demanding tribute or forcing the Zarkelians into servitude. They were simply ending them with cold, brutal efficiency, with the same terrifying precision they had wielded against his fleet. This was not conquest. This was eradication. The humans had arrived, and they were finishing the war the Zarkelians had started centuries ago. Admiral Kalos Var sat frozen in his command chair, the weight of the humans' words suffocating him. "We have already been here." That phrase gnawed at his mind like a parasite. It made no sense. If humanity had already struck, if they had already reached the heart of the Zarkelian Empire, why hadn't there been reports? Why hadn't there been cries for reinforcements, desperate pleas for aid? The homeworld, the throne world of the Grand Dominion, had the strongest defenses in the entire empire. And yet, the human spoke with absolute certainty. The bridge of the Imperium's wrath was silent. His crew stared at him, waiting for orders. He could see the silent battle in their eyes. The same question whispered through the air. What now? Var opened his mandibles to speak when the main view screen flickered to life. His blood turned to ice. The screen did not show the stars, nor the ruined wreckage of his once mighty fleet. Instead, it displayed Zarkelia Prime, the capital of their empire, the jewel of their dominion. And it was burning. The towering citadels of the High Caste were in ruins, great pillars of smoke rising into the atmosphere like funeral pyres. The defensive orbital stations were nothing more than twisted debris. The once bustling cities teeming with trillions of Zarkelians were eerily silent. It was a graveyard. Var's mandibles quivered. "No," he whispered, barely able to force the word out. "It is already over." The human's voice returned, unrelenting, undeniable. "This was not an invasion, this was not a war, this was justice." Var's claws dug into his chair. His heart pounded, his mind scrambling for something, anything, to explain what he was seeing. The humans had always been a minor species. They had been nothing. A fledgling race barely stepping into the stars. The Zarkelians had barely considered them worth the effort of subjugation. And yet, here they were. tearing down a 1,000-year empire as if it were nothing. The screen shifted, and Var felt his stomach drop further. The throne of the Grand Dominion, the Hall of Conquerors, the most sacred place in the entire empire, where the supreme autarch ruled over all. The hall was in ruins. The golden banners of Zarkalian supremacy were shredded, trampled in the dust. And in the center of the throne room, a single figure stood. A human, clad in black armor, the visor of their helmet reflecting the firelight. They held something in their hand. Var squinted. It was a severed head. The supreme autarch, the ruler of the Zarkalian Empire, dead. The human warrior raised the severed head high, turning it toward the cameras broadcasting across the empire. And then they dropped it. The head rolled down the shattered steps of the throne, bouncing like a discarded piece of garbage, a statement, a declaration. The Zarkalian Empire was no more. Var's claws trembled. How? His voice was barely above a whisper. How did you do this? How did you destroy an empire in a single strike? For the first time, the human on the comms let out a slow breath. The same way you did once. Var's breath hitched. We learned from you. The realization hit him like a plasma blast. The humans had been watching, studying, learning. All those years of Zarkalian conquests, all those brutal campaigns where they had crushed weaker species, torn apart civilizations without a second thought. The humans had seen it all. And when their time came, they had not fought with desperation. They had not fought with rage. They had fought like the Zarkalians had taught them, without mercy. Your people will not suffer as ours did, the human said, because there will be no one left to suffer. Var's breath caught in his throat. The screen flickered again. He saw Zarkalian warships plummeting from the skies, their burning wrecks crashing into the cities below. He saw entire military districts being wiped clean by orbital bombardments. He saw escape shuttles, desperately trying to flee, being obliterated one by one. We were weak once, the human continued. You made us strong. Now we make sure you never harm anyone again. A deep hum filled the bridge of the Imperium's wrath. The Vengeance was powering its weapons. Var realized in that moment that this was not surrender. This was execution. He slumped back in his chair, his mandibles parting slightly. There was no rage, no defiance, just cold, sinking acceptance. This was how it ended. The Zarkalian Empire had never feared war until the humans brought it to their doorstep. And now, there was nothing left. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the desolate expanse of the scraplands. Arya Sterling, her breath visible in the chilled air, picked her way through the twisted remains of a once thriving civilization. The rusted hulks of ancient machines loomed around her, their shadows stretching like skeletal fingers across the polluted earth. Her boots crunched on the gravel, the sound echoing through the silence, a stark reminder of the world's emptiness. Arya's eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the landscape for any signs of danger. Mutated creatures, twisted by the great collapse, lurked in the shadows, always hungry, always hunting. She kept her crossbow at the ready, her fingers resting lightly on the trigger. Survival in the scraplands demanded constant vigilance, and Arya had honed her instincts to a razor's edge. Her destination was a crumbling warehouse on the outskirts of the scraplands, a place rumored to hold valuable tech salvage. The building's corrugated metal walls were pitted with rust, and the roof sagged under the weight of time and neglect. Arya approached cautiously, her senses on high alert. The warehouse could hold treasures, or it could be a death trap. In the scraplands, the line between the two was often blurred. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. Arya's flashlight cut through the gloom, illuminating piles of discarded machinery and forgotten technology. She moved methodically, her trained eye picking out items of value amidst the junk. A circuit board here, an intact power cell there. Each find was a small victory, a step closer to survival. As she worked, her mind wandered to the past, to the parents she barely remembered. They had been scientists, brilliant minds working on the cutting edge of technology before the Great Collapse. Their disappearance had left a void in Arya's life, a void she filled with questions and a burning desire for answers. She often wondered what they would think of the world now, of the daughter they left behind, fighting to survive in the ruins of their dreams. A sudden noise snapped her back to the present, a soft scrape of metal on metal, the faint whisper of movement in the shadows. Arya froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She listened intently, her breath held, her crossbow raised. The sound came again, closer this time. She pivoted silently, her eyes searching the darkness. A mutated creature, its form a grotesque parody of a wolf, emerged from the shadows. Its eyes glowed with a feral hunger, and its lips curled back to reveal a mouth full of jagged teeth. Arya's finger tightened on the trigger, but she hesitated. Killing the creature would alert others to her presence, and she couldn't afford a fight right now. With a swift, silent movement, she retrieved a small device from her belt and tossed it towards the creature. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, momentarily disorienting the beast. Seizing the opportunity, Arya slipped away, melting into the shadows and leaving the warehouse behind. As she made her way back to her makeshift camp, the weight of her finds comforting in her pack, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The scraplands were changing, the balance of power shifting. Omnicorp's influence was growing, their enforcers venturing further into the wastelands, their grip on the remnants of society tightening. Arya knew she couldn't keep living like this, scavenging for scraps, always on the run. Something had to change. The next day, Arya ventured deeper into the scraplands, driven by a restless curiosity and the need for more valuable salvage. The terrain grew increasingly treacherous, the remnants of civilization giving way to vast fields of twisted metal and toxic waste. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the ever-present hum of danger. As she navigated a particularly dense thicket of rusted machinery, Arya's foot caught on something solid. She stumbled, catching herself on the jagged edge of a corroded metal beam. Cursing under her breath, she looked down to see what had tripped her. Buried beneath the debris was a metal hatch, its surface worn but still intact. Intrigued, Arya brushed away the dirt and rust, revealing a symbol etched into the metal, a stylized phoenix rising from the ashes. Her heart quickened as she recognized the symbol. It was the emblem of the Phoenix Initiative, a secretive group of scientists and engineers who had worked on advanced technologies before the Great Collapse. Her parents had been part of that initiative. Could this hatch lead to one of their hidden bunkers? With a surge of excitement, Arya set to work clearing the debris from the hatch. It was a laborious process, the metal heavy and unwieldy, but she was driven by a sense of purpose. This could be the key to unlocking the secrets of her past, to understanding the true potential of the technology that had been lost in the collapse. After what felt like hours, the hatch was finally clear. Arya gripped the handle and pulled with all her might. The hatch creaked open, revealing a dark staircase leading down into the earth. The air that wafted up was stale but surprisingly clean, a stark contrast to the polluted atmosphere of the scraplands. Arya descended the stairs cautiously, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with reinforced concrete, and the air grew cooler the deeper she went. At the bottom of the stairs, She found herself in a large chamber filled with rows of shelves laden with dusty equipment and forgotten technology. She moved through the chamber, her eyes wide with wonder. The technology here was unlike anything she had ever seen, sleek, advanced, and seemingly untouched by the passage of time. She ran her fingers over the smooth surfaces, marveling at the craftsmanship and the potential they held. In the center of the chamber stood a large, cylindrical device, its surface adorned with intricate patterns and glowing lights. Arya approached it, her heart pounding with anticipation. This was the artifact, the key to the Phoenix Initiative's most advanced technologies. She could feel its power, a hum of energy that resonated deep within her. As she reached out to touch the artifact, a sudden noise echoed through the chamber. The sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the stairs. Arya's heart leapt into her throat. Someone had followed her. She quickly hid behind a nearby shelf, her crossbow at the ready, her eyes fixed on the entrance. The footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously through the chamber. Arya held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She peered through a gap in the shelves, her eyes straining to see who had followed her into the bunker. A figure emerged from the shadows, clad in the distinctive armor of Omnicorp's enforcers. The sight sent a chill down Arya's spine. Omnicorp's presence here could only mean trouble. The enforcer scanned the chamber, his gaze lingering on the artifact before moving on to search the rest of the room. Arya watched him warily, her mind racing. She couldn't let him find her, but she also couldn't let him take the artifact. She had to act fast. As the enforcer turned his back to her, she silently emerged from her hiding spot, her crossbow raised. She took aim and fired, the bolt striking the enforcer in the back of the neck. He crumpled to the ground with a grunt, his body going limp. Relieved, Arya approached the fallen enforcer, her eyes scanning the chamber for any signs of more intruders. Satisfied that she was alone, she turned her attention back to the artifact. She reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against the cool metal surface. A soft hum of energy pulsed through her, a sensation both exhilarating and slightly unsettling. She began to examine the artifact more closely, her eyes taking in the intricate patterns and glowing lights. It was clear that this device held immense power, but its purpose remained a mystery. She searched the nearby shelves, looking for any documents or data logs that might provide more information. After a few minutes of frantic searching, she found a dusty tablet tucked away in a corner. She wiped away the grime, revealing a sleek, advanced device unlike any she had seen before. She powered it on, her heart racing with anticipation. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of files and documents related to the Phoenix Initiative. Arya scrolled through the files, her eyes scanning the text quickly. The artifact, she learned, was a prototype energy device capable of harnessing clean, renewable energy from the environment. It was the culmination of years of research and development by the Phoenix Initiative, a project aimed at creating a sustainable future for humanity. But there was more. Buried within the files were references to her parents, their names appearing again and again in connection with the artifact. They had been instrumental in its development, their brilliance and dedication driving the project forward. Arya's heart swelled with pride and a deep sense of loss. She had always known her parents were extraordinary, but seeing the extent of their achievements filled her with a newfound respect and determination. As she delved deeper into the files, she uncovered darker truths. Omnicorp had been aware of the Phoenix Initiative's work and had sought to control it for their own gain. Her parents had resisted, refusing to let their technology fall into the wrong hands. But their defiance had come at a cost. They had been betrayed, their work stolen, and their lives taken in the chaos of the Great Collapse. Arya's hands trembled as she read the final entries, the words blurring before her eyes. The truth was almost too much to bear, but it also filled her with a burning resolve. She would not let her parents' sacrifices be in vain. She would use the artifact to expose Omnicorp's crimes and free humanity from their tyranny. With newfound determination, Arya gathered the tablet and the artifact, tucking them safely into her pack. She knew she couldn't stay in the bunker any longer. Omnicorp would send more enforcers, and she needed to be ready. She had to find allies, form a plan, and strike back against the corporation that had taken so much from her. As she made her way back up the stairs, the weight of her newfound knowledge and the artifact's power pressing heavily on her shoulders, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The Scraplands were a dangerous place, and she knew she would need all her wits and resources to stay one step ahead of her enemies. But she was ready. For the first time in her life, she had a clear purpose, a mission that went beyond mere survival. She would bring down Omnicorp and honor her parents' legacy, no matter the cost. The journey back to her camp was fraught with tension. Arya moved swiftly but cautiously, her senses on high alert. The knowledge that Omnicorp was aware of the artifact's existence and her discovery of it weighed heavily on her mind. She knew they would stop at nothing to retrieve it, and she couldn't afford to be caught off guard. As she neared her camp, she heard the distant hum of engines. Her heart leapt into her throat. Omnicorp's enforcers were already on her trail. She quickened her pace, her mind racing with strategies for evasion and defense. She had to warn her allies and prepare for the inevitable confrontation. Her camp was a modest setup, hidden within the ruins of an old factory. It was a place of relative safety, where she and a few trusted friends could regroup and plan their next moves. As she approached, she saw Lyra, her closest friend and fellow scavenger, standing guard. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise and concern as she saw Arya's hurried approach. "Arya, what's wrong?" Lyra asked, her voice tense with worry. "Omnicorp is on our tail," Arya replied breathlessly. "They know about the artifact. We need to move, now." Lyra nodded, her expression grim. She quickly gathered their supplies, her movements efficient and practiced. Within minutes, they were ready to leave, their camp dismantled and their tracks covered. As they made their way through the Scraplands, Arya filled Lyra in on her discovery and the danger they now faced. Lyra listened intently, her eyes widening in shock and awe as Arya described the artifact's power and the truth about her parents. "This changes everything," Lyra said, her voice filled with determination. "We can't let Omnicorp get their hands on it. We have to fight back." Arya nodded in agreement. "But we can't do it alone. We need to rally more supporters, form a resistance. Omnicorp's control is too strong for just the two of us to break." Lyra thought for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I know a few people who might be willing to help. Scavengers, rebels, people who have lost everything to Omnicorp's greed. If we can convince them to join us, we might stand a chance." Arya felt a glimmer of hope. "Let's do it. We'll start by reaching out to those we trust, build a network of allies. Omnicorp won't know what hit them." As they continued their journey, the hum of engines grew louder, a constant reminder of the danger they faced. They moved quickly but carefully, using their knowledge of the Scraplands to stay hidden and evade their pursuers. The landscape was their ally, its twisted metal and polluted earth providing ample cover and opportunities for ambush. They encountered other scavengers along the way, people who had heard whispers of Arya's discovery and the trouble it had brought. Some offered their support, their eyes gleaming with the promise of revenge against Omnicorp. Others were more cautious, their fear of the corporation's power outweighing their desire for change. But Arya and Lyra were persistent, their passion and determination slowly winning over even the most skeptical. As they gathered more allies, Arya couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Omnicorp's enforcers were relentless, their pursuit unyielding. She knew it was only a matter of time before they caught up to them, and she had to be ready. She had to protect the artifact and the hope it represented, no matter the cost. The days that followed were a blur of constant motion and strategic planning. Arya and Lyra moved from one hidden camp to another, rallying supporters and formulating a plan to strike back against Omnicorp. The artifact, safely tucked away in Arya's pack, was a beacon of hope and a constant reminder of the stakes they faced. One evening, as they huddled around a small fire in the ruins of an old warehouse, Arya and Lyra discussed their next moves. The flames cast flickering shadows on the crumbling walls, creating an eerie atmosphere that matched the tension in the air. "We need to find a way to expose Omnicorp's crimes to the public," Arya said, her voice low but determined. "If we can show the people of Neo-London the truth, they might rise up against the corporation." Lyra nodded in agreement. "But how do we do that? Omnicorp controls all the media, all the information. Getting the truth out there won't be easy." Arya thought for a moment, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to hack into their broadcast system, override their signals. If we can broadcast the truth directly to the people, Omnicorp won't be able to stop it." Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. "That's a huge risk, Arya. If we get caught, they'll kill us." Arya met her friend's gaze steadily. "I know, but we can't let fear stop us. This is our chance to make a real difference, to honor the sacrifices of those who came before us." Lyra took a deep breath, her expression resolute. "You're right. We have to try, but we'll need help. We can't do this alone." Arya nodded. "I have a few people in mind. Scavengers, rebels, people who have the skills and the courage to pull this off. We need to reach out to them, convince them to join us." Over the next few days, Arya and Lyra traveled through the scraplands, seeking out those who shared their desire for change. They met with scavengers who had lost loved ones to Omnicorp's greed, rebels who had been fighting against the corporation for years, and even a few disillusioned citizens of Neo-London who had seen the dark side of the city's supposed utopia. One of their first recruits was a skilled hacker named Kale, a young man with a quick wit and an even quicker mind. He had been living on the fringes of society, using his talents to expose the corruption of those in power. When Arya and Lyra approached him with their plan, he agreed to help without hesitation. "I've been waiting for a chance to strike back against Omnicorp," Kyle said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "This is it. This is our moment." With Kyle on board, Arya and Lyra continued to gather allies. They met with a group of rebels led by a charismatic figure named Marcus, a man who had dedicated his life to fighting against Omnicorp's tyranny. Marcus listened intently as Arya and Lyra outlined their plan, his expression thoughtful. "It's a bold move," Marcus said, his voice grave, "but it's exactly the kind of action we need to take if we want to make a real difference. I'm in." As more allies joined their cause, Arya and Lyra began to formulate a detailed plan. They would infiltrate Omnicorp's headquarters in Neo-London, hack into their broadcast system, and expose the corporation's crimes to the public. It was a dangerous mission, fraught with risks and uncertainties, but they were determined to see it through. The days leading up to the infiltration were filled with intense preparation. Arya and Lyra worked closely with Kale and Marcus, coordinating their efforts and ensuring that every detail was accounted for. They studied maps of Omnicorp's headquarters, memorized security protocols, and practiced their hacking skills until they were confident in their abilities. As the day of the infiltration approached, Arya couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation and dread that churned in her stomach. She knew that this mission was their best chance to expose Omnicorp's crimes and free humanity from their tyranny, but she also knew that the risks were immense. If they failed, the consequences would be dire. But she was ready. She had come too far, sacrificed too much to turn back now. With the artifact's power and the support of her allies, she would face whatever challenges lay ahead. She would honor her parents' legacy and fight for a better future, no matter the cost. The night of the infiltration was dark and stormy, the sky churning with thunderclouds that mirrored the tension in the air. Arya, Lyra, Kyle, Marcus, and a handful of other rebels gathered in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Neo-London, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. Arya checked her gear one last time, her fingers tracing the outline of the artifact tucked safely in her pack. She looked around at her companions, their faces etched with determination and resolve. They were ready. They had to be. "All right, everyone knows the plan," Arya said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "We stick to the shadows, avoid detection, and make our way to the broadcast center. Kyle will handle the hacking, and the rest of us will provide cover and support." The group nodded in unison, their expressions grim but focused. They had trained for this moment, prepared for every eventuality. Now it was time to put their plan into action. They moved swiftly and silently through the streets of Neo-London, sticking to the shadows and avoiding the ever-present surveillance cameras. The city was a stark contrast to the desolation of the scraplands, its towering skyscrapers and gleaming lights a testament to Omnicorp's power and control. But beneath the surface, the rot of corruption and oppression festered, a cancer eating away at the heart of society. As they neared Omnicorp's headquarters, a monolithic structure of steel and glass that dominated the skyline, Arya's heart raced faster. This was the lion's den, the heart of the beast they sought to slay. The security was tight, the risks immense, but they had come too far to turn back now. Kyle led the way, his knowledge of the building's layout and security systems invaluable. They slipped past patrols of enforcers, their movements silent and precise, and made their way to a hidden service entrance. Kyle quickly hacked the lock, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, a stark contrast to the polluted atmosphere of the scraplands. They moved quickly but cautiously, their senses on high alert. The corridors were a labyrinth of steel and glass, the hum of machinery, and the distant murmur of voices a constant reminder of the danger they faced. They encountered their first obstacle as they approached the broadcast center. A group of enforcers stood guard outside the door, their expressions stern and vigilant. Arya and her companions exchanged a quick glance, their minds racing with strategies for evasion or confrontation. Marcus stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "I'll handle this. The rest of you find another way in. We can't afford to get caught here." Before anyone could protest, Marcus strode towards the enforcers, his posture confident and authoritative. He engaged them in conversation, his voice smooth and persuasive, drawing their attention away from the door. Seizing the opportunity, Arya and the others slipped past the distracted enforcers and made their way to a nearby maintenance shaft. They climbed quickly and silently, their breaths coming in short, tense gasps. The shaft led them to a ventilation duct that ran above the broadcast center, providing a hidden vantage point from which to observe and plan their next move. Below them, the broadcast center was a hive of activity. Technicians moved between banks of computers and screens, their faces illuminated by the glow of data and information. At the center of the room, a large console controlled the city's broadcast system, a vital tool in Omnicorp's arsenal of propaganda and control. Kyle studied the layout carefully, his eyes scanning the room for potential entry points and obstacles. After a moment, he nodded to himself, his expression determined. "All right, here's the plan," he said, his voice low but steady. "I'll hack into the system from here, override the broadcast controls. The rest of you provide cover and support. We need to be quick and quiet. If we get caught, it's all over." The group nodded in unison, their expressions grim but focused. They had come this far, sacrificed too much to fail now. They were ready. They had to be. The hacking process was tense and painstaking, every keystroke a careful dance between success and detection. Kyle's fingers flew over the keyboard, his eyes scanning lines of code and security protocols with a speed and precision that left Arya in awe. She watched him work, her heart pounding in her chest, her senses on high alert for any sign of danger. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness, each second a battle between hope and fear. The broadcast center below them hummed with activity, the technicians oblivious to the rebels hidden above them. Arya's mind raced with scenarios and contingencies, her grip on her crossbow tightening as she prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Suddenly, Kale let out a soft exclamation of triumph. "I'm in. The broadcast system is ours." Arya felt a surge of relief and excitement. They had done it. They had breached Omnicorp's defenses and seized control of their most powerful tool of propaganda and control. Now it was time to expose the truth. But their victory was short-lived. Almost as soon as Coyle had announced his success, an alarm blared through the building, its harsh, discordant sound echoing through the corridors and sending a jolt of fear through Arya's heart. They had been detected. "We need to move now," Arya said, her voice urgent but steady. "Kyle, can you broadcast from a remote location?" Kale nodded, his expression grim. "Yes, but we need to get out of here first. If they catch us, it's all over." The group moved quickly but cautiously, their senses on high alert. They retraced their steps through the ventilation ducts and maintenance shafts, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and adrenaline. The sound of footsteps and shouted commands echoed through the building, a stark reminder of the danger they faced. As they emerged from the service entrance, they were greeted by the sight of enforcers swarming the area, their expressions stern and vigilant. Arya's heart sank. They were surrounded. "We need to split up," Marcus said, his voice low but commanding. "It's our only chance. We'll meet back at the warehouse. Good luck." Before anyone could protest, Marcus slipped away into the shadows, his movements swift and silent. The rest of the group exchanged a quick glance, their minds racing with strategies for evasion and escape. Arya and Lyra stuck together, their bond of friendship and trust a comforting presence in the chaos. They moved quickly but cautiously, their senses on high alert. The streets of Neo-London were a labyrinth of steel and glass, the ever-present surveillance cameras a constant threat. But they had trained for this moment, prepared for every eventuality. Now it was time to put their skills to the test. They encountered their first obstacle as they approached a crowded intersection. A group of enforcers stood guard, their expressions stern and vigilant. Arya and Lyra exchanged a quick glance, their minds racing with strategies for evasion or confrontation. Lyra stepped forward, her voice low but commanding. "I'll handle this. You find another way around. We can't afford to get caught here." Before Arya could protest, Lyra strode towards the enforcers, her posture confident and authoritative. She engaged them in conversation, her voice smooth and persuasive, drawing their attention away from the intersection. Seizing the opportunity, Arya slipped past the distracted enforcers and made her way to a nearby alley. She moved quickly but cautiously, her senses on high alert. The sound of footsteps and shouted commands echoed through the streets, a stark reminder of the danger she faced. As she neared the warehouse, Arya's heart raced faster. She was almost there. She was almost safe. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense that danger was lurking just around the corner. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. Arya's heart leapt into her throat. It was Victor Kane, his expression cold and calculating, his eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. "Arya Sterling," he said, his voice smooth and menacing. "I've been expecting you." Arya's heart pounded in her chest as she faced Victor Kane, the man responsible for so much of her suffering and the suffering of countless others. His presence was imposing, his eyes cold and calculating, but she refused to let fear overwhelm her. She had come too far, sacrificed too much to back down now. "Victor Kane," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. "I should have known you'd be lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce." Victor's lips curled into a smirk, his expression one of amusement and contempt. "You've caused quite a stir, Arya, stealing valuable technology, rallying rebels, hacking into our broadcast system. You've been a very busy girl." Arya met his gaze steadily, her chin lifted in defiance. "And you've been a very busy tyrant, Victor, exploiting the people of Neo-London, controlling their lives, their thoughts, their very existence. But your reign of terror ends now." Victor's smirk widened, his eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. "You think you can stop me, Arya? You think you can expose my so-called crimes and bring down Omnicorp? You're delusional. The people of Neo-London need me. They need the order and stability that Omnicorp provides. Without us, they would be lost, adrift in a world of chaos and despair." Arya's grip on her crossbow tightened, her voice filled with conviction. "The people of Neo-London need the truth, Victor. They need to know that their so-called saviors are nothing more than corrupt, power-hungry tyrants. They need to know that there is a better way, a future built on freedom and justice, not oppression and control." Victor's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing in anger. "You're a fool, Arya. A naive, idealistic fool. The world doesn't work that way. Power is the only currency that matters, and I have more of it than anyone else. You can't stop me. You can't expose me. You can't even hope to defeat me." Arya's voice was cold and determined. "Watch me." With a swift, fluid movement, she raised her crossbow and fired, the bolt streaking towards Victor with deadly accuracy. But he was quick, his reflexes honed by years of ruthless ambition and relentless pursuit of power. He dodged the bolt with a grace that belied his age, his expression one of amusement and contempt. "You'll have to do better than that, Arya," he said, his voice smooth and menacing. "But I must admit I'm impressed. You've shown more spirit and determination than I expected. It's almost a shame that I have to kill you." Arya's heart raced, her mind racing with strategies for evasion and attack. She knew she couldn't defeat Victor in a direct confrontation. He was too powerful, too well protected. She had to outwit him, outmaneuver him, use her wits and her allies to expose his crimes and bring him to justice. But for now, she had to escape. She had to regroup with her allies, formulate a new plan, and strike back against Omnicorp with renewed vigor and determination. She had to survive. With a swift, silent movement, she turned and fled, her heart pounding in her chest, her senses on high alert. She could hear Victor's laughter echoing behind her, a chilling reminder of the danger she faced and the stakes she was fighting for. As she made her way back to the warehouse, Arya's mind raced with thoughts of her parents, their sacrifices, and the legacy they had left behind. She thought of the artifact, its power, and the hope it represented. She thought of her allies, their courage, and their unwavering support. And she thought of the people of Neo-London, their struggles, and their desperate need for the truth. She would not let them down. She would not let her parents' sacrifices be in vain. She would fight for a better future, no matter the cost. And she would expose Victor Kane and Omnicorp for the tyrants they truly were. The warehouse was a hive of activity, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Arya, Lyra, Kyle, Marcus, and the other rebels gathered around a makeshift table, their faces etched with determination and resolve. The artifact lay at the center of the table, its glowing lights a beacon of hope and a constant reminder of the stakes they faced. Arya looked around at her companions, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. They had come so far, sacrificed so much, and yet they remained steadfast in their commitment to the cause. She knew that she could not have asked for better allies, better friends. "All right, everyone," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "We've made it this far, but the real battle is just beginning. We need to regroup, formulate a new plan, and strike back against Omnicorp with renewed vigor and determination." The group nodded in unison, their expressions grim but focused. They had come too far, sacrificed too much to turn back now. They were ready. They had to be. Kyle spoke up, his voice thoughtful and measured. "We need to find a way to broadcast the truth to the people of Neo-London without getting caught. Omnicorp will be on high alert after our last attempt. We can't afford to make the same mistakes again." Marcus nodded in agreement. "We need to be smarter, more strategic. We need to hit them where it hurts, expose their weaknesses, and exploit their vulnerabilities. We need to turn the tables on them, make them the hunted instead of the hunters." Lyra's eyes gleamed with a fierce determination. "We need to rally more supporters, build a larger resistance. The more people we have on our side, the stronger we'll be. We can't do this alone. We need an army." Arya felt a surge of excitement and resolve. Her allies were right. They needed to be smarter, more strategic. They needed to build a larger resistance, rally more supporters, and turn the tables on Omnicorp. They needed to expose the truth and bring down the tyrants who sought to control and oppress them. "All right," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "Here's the plan. Kyle, you work on finding a way to broadcast the truth without getting caught. Use your hacking skills, your knowledge of Omnicorp's systems, and your ingenuity to outwit them and outmaneuver them." Kyle nodded, his expression determined. "I'll do my best, Arya. I won't let you down." Arya turned to Marcus. "Marcus, you work on finding Omnicorp's weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. Use your knowledge of their operations, your contacts within the city, and your strategic mind to turn the tables on them. Make them the hunted instead of the hunters." Marcus's eyes gleamed with a predatory hunger. "Consider it done, Arya. I'll make them regret ever crossing us." Finally, Arya turned to Lyra. "Lyra, you work on rallying more supporters, building a larger resistance. Use your charisma, your passion, and your unwavering belief in our cause to inspire others to join us. We need an army, and you're the one to build it." Lyra's expression was fierce and determined. "I won't let you down, Arya. I'll build an army that will bring Omnicorp to its knees." As the group dispersed to carry out their respective tasks, Arya couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation and excitement that churned in her stomach. They were on the cusp of something monumental, something that could change the course of history and the fate of humanity. They were on the cusp of exposing the truth and bringing down the tyrants who sought to control and oppress them. But she also knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty. Omnicorp would not go down without a fight, and they would stop at nothing to maintain their power and control. Arya and her allies would have to be smarter, more strategic, and more determined than ever before. They would have to outwit their enemies, outmaneuver their obstacles, and overcome their fears. But they were ready. They had come too far, sacrificed too much to turn back now. They were ready to fight for a better future, no matter the cost. And they were ready to expose the truth and bring down the tyrants who sought to control and oppress them. The days that followed were a blur of intense preparation and strategic planning. Arya, Lyra, Kyle, Marcus, and the other rebels worked tirelessly, their minds and bodies pushed to the limits as they formulated their plan and gathered their resources. The warehouse was a hive of activity, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Coyle spent countless hours poring over lines of code and security protocols, his fingers flying over the keyboard with a speed and precision that left Arya in awe. He was determined to find a way to broadcast the truth to the people of Neo-London without getting caught, and he was leaving no stone unturned in his quest. Marcus, meanwhile, was hard at work finding Omnicorp's weaknesses and vulnerabilities. He pored over maps and blueprints, studied surveillance footage, and consulted with his contacts within the city. He was a master strategist, his mind a labyrinth of plans and contingencies, and he was determined to turn the tables on their enemies. Lyra was a whirlwind of energy and charisma, her passion and unwavering belief in their cause inspiring others to join them. She traveled through the scraplands and the streets of Neo-London, rallying supporters and building a larger resistance. Her words were like a spark, igniting a fire of rebellion and hope in the hearts of those who listened. Arya worked alongside her allies, her mind racing with thoughts of the artifact, her parents, and the legacy they had left behind. She thought of the people of Neo-London, their struggles, and their desperate need for the truth. She thought of the future, a future built on freedom and justice, not oppression and control. And she thought of the battle that lay ahead, the battle that would determine the fate of humanity. As the day of the final confrontation approached, Arya's heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. They were as prepared as they could be, their plan meticulously crafted, their resources carefully gathered. But they were also acutely aware of the risks they faced, the dangers that lay ahead. Omnicorp would not go down without a fight, and they would stop at nothing to maintain their power and control. But Arya and her allies were ready. They had come too far, sacrificed too much to turn back now. They were ready to fight for a better future, no matter the cost. And they were ready to expose the truth and bring down the tyrants who sought to control and oppress them. The day of the final battle was tense and fraught with anticipation. Arya, Lyra, Kyle, Marcus, and the other rebels gathered around a makeshift table in the warehouse, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. The artifact lay at the center of the table, its glowing lights a beacon of hope, and a constant reminder of the stakes they faced. Kyle took a deep breath, his expression determined. "All right, everyone. This is it. This is our moment. We've come too far, sacrificed too much to fail now. We have to succeed. We have to expose the truth and bring down Omnicorp." The group nodded in unison, their expressions grim but focused. They had come too far, sacrificed too much to turn back now. They were ready. They had to be. Arya looked around at her companions, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She knew that she could not have asked for better allies, better friends. They had stood by her side through thick and thin, their unwavering support and determination a constant source of strength and inspiration. "All right, Kyle," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Let's do this. Let's expose the truth and bring down Omnicorp." Kyle nodded, his expression determined. He took a deep breath and began the broadcast, his fingers flying over the keyboard with a speed and precision that left Arya in awe. The air was thick with tension and anticipation, the seconds ticking by with agonizing slowness. The days that followed the final battle were a time of healing and rebuilding. The people of Neo-London, inspired by the truth they had seen and heard, rose up against Omnicorp, their voices united in a call for freedom and justice. The city was a hive of activity, the air thick with hope and determination. Arya, Lyra, Kyle, Marcus, and the other rebels worked tirelessly, their minds and bodies pushed to the limits as they helped to rebuild a better future. They worked alongside the people of Neo-London, their unwavering support and determination a constant source of strength and inspiration. The artifact, with its immense power and potential, was used to harness clean, renewable energy from the environment. The technology was shared freely, its benefits available to all. The scraplands began to recover, the polluted earth slowly healing as new cities were built on the principles of freedom and sustainability. Arya looked around at her companions, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. They had come so far, sacrificed so much, and yet they remained steadfast in their commitment to the cause. She knew that she could not have asked for better allies, better friends. "We've done it," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We've exposed the truth, brought down Omnicorp, and inspired a better future. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, all of you." The group nodded in unison, their expressions a mix of joy and relief. They had come too far, sacrificed too much to turn back now. They were ready. They had to be. Lyra spoke up, her voice filled with determination. "This is just the beginning, Arya. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of lives to change, but together we can do it. Together we can build a better future." Arya nodded, her expression determined. "You're right, Lyra. This is just the beginning. But together we can overcome any obstacle, any challenge, any enemy that stands in our way. Together we can fight for a better future, no matter the cost. And together, we can win." As the group dispersed to continue their work, Arya couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation and excitement that churned in her stomach. They were on the cusp of something monumental, something that could change the course of history and the fate of humanity. They were on the cusp of building a better future, a future built on freedom and justice, not oppression and control. And as she looked around at her companions, her heart swelled with pride and gratitude. She knew that together they could overcome any obstacle, any challenge, any enemy that stood in their way. Together they could fight for a better future, no matter the cost. And together they could win.